Welcome to Valley Viewpoint. I'm Roger Johnston. My guest is Don Casebolt. He's a retired physician and he loves to write about current health information. And so, welcome Don once again to Valley Viewpoint.
I'm glad to be here.
You have some papers in front of you that you have written, and I'm just wondering, maybe first of all, since you've written to the Union Bulletin for health,
Right.
Are these submitted to the Union Bulletin, or have they been published? Or
Yes, information, not exactly what I've got here, but information has been submitted to the bulletin on both of these issues.
on both of these topics
Right.
in the Union Bulletin.
Yeah.
Since they've already been submitted to the Union Bulletin, have you had any response to them?
Not that I can think of, but I seldom get any personal response. But people will sometimes tell me they've read my articles. But as far as a letter to the editor or anything like that, I haven't seen it. Well, I did have on a separate issue, but anyway.
Well, I'll just have to be very candid with what I was sharing, that I was in the kitchen just before I came here, and I was dealing with a vat of rhubarb.
Yeah.
And I felt very accomplished in the sense that I wasn't using processed sugar to sweeten the rhubarb, but I was using a large amount of frozen bananas. And it was tasting so good, I was saying, uh-oh, I read Don's article about weight gain. It was too good. And you're kind of spoiling the experience, Don. I'm going to give you a taste of this,
Yes,
but
okay.
I have so much that I have a feeling that my serving size and number of servings would not stop before I'd add some extra pounds. And that's the topic that you have before us, I believe.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, talk to us about what you've been sharing. I don't know how
Yeah.
how well it will go over with a lot of us that are kind of on the threshold of what you're talking about.
Yes, well, excess weight is really a significant problem, and it increases the risk of cancer. And people need to know that. That's what I want people to know about. And I want to make it clear that this is just not my own idea. In fact, this information that I'm going to be telling you about comes from Walter Willett, MD. He's the chair of the School of Public Health at Harvard Medical School.
And he does have a reputation.
That's
even
right.
for me, who I'm not in this field, but
Right.
I've sure heard of him before.
Right. Walter Willett, actually, I think, known worldwide for his interest in health matters and his expertise, as well as the other men associated with him. It's not just Walter Willett, but it's the men in that health department. And there are just some interesting things, and there have been a number of studies done. These ideas are not just based on something they've come up, but there have been different studies that have been done that show that this is basically true. And there was a study reported in the British Medical Journal of November 2017. 1.2 million women in the UK aged 50 to 64 were followed for 5 years.
Now, Don, I'd like to stop you at that point.
Yeah,
That is a massive study.
that's right.
Massive. 1.2 million.
Right, right.
I believe the Adventist Health Study was around 90,000 or so
Right.
in this ballpark.
Right.
So 1.2 million.
Right.
How long did they follow them? Does
Well,
it
they
say?
followed them for 5 years.
Oh my.
And the conclusion was that 5% of all cancers were due to being overweight. And these are the cancers that they mentioned: endometrial, esophageal, kidney, pancreatic, breast, ovarian, leukemia, and multiple myeloma.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then the
those
question,
some of the dangerous ones for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Ones
that's
that are
right.
hard
Well,
to treat.
yeah, they're hard to treat, and no one wants to get them. At least I hope they don't want to. But that's the purpose of this message. I want
Yeah.
people to know that. And how can all this happen? Well, it's part of it's due to estrogen. And obese postmenopausal women have estrogen levels 3 times higher than thin most postmenopausal women.
So they're putting on their thinking caps as they evaluate 1.2 million people, and they're
Right.
finding out that the heavier they are, the more frequent these cancers occur. And they're
Right.
saying, how come?
Yeah.
What's the idea behind this biologically? And they're thinking that it might be hormonal.
Right, exactly that.
That fat itself puts out a hormone?
Well,
Or
no,
I mean,
the fat doesn't put out a hormone, but somehow it affects the metabolism. And
oh,
here it says that obese postmenopausal women have estrogen levels 3 times higher than the thin postmenopausal.
now that is dramatic. When you say something like 3x,
yeah, that's
three
right.
times,
That's
I mean,
right.
we're looking at some dramatic increases
That's
of the estrogen.
That's exactly right, and that's what we're here to let people know. They need to know about. Now, I was not able to find anything in the medical literature that explains exactly why that happens. And that was sort of frustrating to me. I tried to find out, but all I know is that with this large study, that's what they found out. Now, there's another thing that goes along with this, and that's insulin levels, and this is a different story with insulin. Excess weight often leads to elevated insulin levels, and insulin levels make cells multiply more rapidly. So there's something.
It's a growth hormone.
Well,
It grows cells.
Yeah, yeah.
As you say, the cells are rapidly
Yeah.
increasing.
right.
It's a growth hormone, I suppose you might
Yeah,
say.
I suppose you could use
I've
it.
heard books say that
Yeah, yeah.
insulin is a growth hormone. So whether you take it by mouth or
Yeah.
whether your
Yeah.
own body is generating
Well, the body makes excess.
right insulin
Yeah, makes excess.
out of the pancreas.
Right. Mhm.
And so you want to reduce that amount of insulin in your blood as
Yeah.
much as possible
Right.
by eating veggies
Yeah,
instead of a lot of carbs.
Yeah, right.
A lot of
yeah.
carbohydrates.
And here's what this study was done by the Albert Einstein School of Medicine in New York City. Postmenopausal women with the highest blood levels of insulin still had 2.5 times the risk of breast cancer compared with the lowest. So
2.5 times.
yeah, 2.5 times
That's
more.
a very significant increase, isn't it?
And then we want to think here of a report from the Mayo Clinic. In 2014, the Mayo Clinic reported in studies done on 650,000 white men and women ages 20 to 83. And there is significant risk of dying for every 2 inches increase in the waist, even if the person was not overweight. So weight gain is something that this is what we're thinking about. You need to try to keep from gaining all that weight.
So even if you're not overweight, keeping that belt cinched tighter, huh?
Yeah,
no,
right, yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, we want circulation happening there,
Right, no.
but the center of the body is
Yeah.
what they're looking at,
Yeah.
and the waist
Yeah.
size.
And one of the things that we have people do is to take a tape measure and measure right around the umbilicus and see, how much increase there's been, and that is kind of gives you a gauge of what we're looking at. Then the JAMA, that's the Journal of the American Medical Association, reported in a study from Harvard School of Public Health, again, in which 93,000 women and 25,000 men were followed for about 35 years.
Now that's about the size of the Adventist Medical,
Yeah.
the Adventist Health
In
Center.
women, it was found that if they had gained 5 to 20 pounds after age 18, they had a higher risk of obesity-related cancer, gallstones, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and high blood pressure. Now, in men, it's a little different. Before the problem arose in men, they had to gain more weight, but if they gained 5 to 20 pounds after age 21, they still had a higher risk of high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes.
So Don, I'm sure sorry that you've gained so much weight since you were 18, or 21, I guess, for the men.
Well, I'll tell you, now people look at me and they think a stiff wind would blow me away. But I happen to be genetically thin. I was born with a slim gene, I guess. I weigh the least of all of my 5
Your
siblings.
Uh-huh.
And they're heavier. Some of them, one of my sisters at one time weighed about 200 pounds.
Uh-huh.
And and I'm kind of glad that I don't have to worry about gaining weight. I can eat what I want, but of course I'm on to the Edenic diet. The diet that God gave to man in the Garden of Eden was the perfect diet. And when you stop to think about it, of course, there was no animal products in that at all.
Do you think they had chickens that they possibly used some of their eggs? Adam and Eve, did they use eggs, do you think?
Well, all you have to do is read carefully the first Genesis 1 and 2, and you find that even the animals ate. They didn't. There was no animal food in what the animals ate. Animals ate plant food too.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't eating chickens or eggs.
It just seems like with our cultural experience that it's hard to believe that Adam and Eve just ate plants and fruit.
Right, right, yeah.
And at first they didn't even eat vegetables that are rooted, I guess.
That's right.
Am I correct?
Right. In fact, it wasn't until after the devil tempted Eve with the fruit, and Adam followed suit, that after that he gave them root vegetables or herbs.
Herbs.
Yeah. So if people want to really live healthfully, they're going to want to think about what they're eating. And there's a very interesting thing on this truth, and that is that I'm aware of several scientists, high-profile scientists, Dr. Esselstyn, who we brought to Walla Walla about 6 years ago. I learned that he and his wife are atheists. I was talking to them about some spiritual things, and he's promoting a whole plant food diet.
I think that's the one that our past President Clinton is the one that is alive today because of him.
Right, yes, that's right. And then there's the fellow, Dr. Campbell, that wrote the book, The China Study. He's an evolutionist. And Max, the guy that wrote How Not to Die, he also is an evolutionist.
Dr. Greger.
Yeah,
Greger. You gave me that book.
Right.
Thank you so much. And I just got it returned back to me. I've already been blessed to read it again. Thank you. We'll be right back with Dr. Don Casebolt after this break. I'm back with Dr. Don Casebolt. He's talking to us about some aspects of our health, and he loves to write about it at the Union Bulletin, and he is here again to tell us, for example, on the first half, if you have just joined us, that we need to be aware, unfortunately, the thresholds of weight gain. Since we were 18, or if you're a man, 21, don't go over 20 pounds, and even that is risky from when you were a teenager. That to me is very, very challenging. Right. In fact, I was in preparing for this interview with Don, I went to my bathroom scales, and I'll tell you, I lost. I didn't come up to what they are talking about with these big studies, which are quite impressive.
Right.
So and of course we're just talking about statistics, but I shouldn't say we're just. These are significant red flags that we need to be aware of what extra fat can do.
Right.
It burdens the body, apparently.
Right.
Well, Don, then we need to have the energy to get out and exercise. So therefore, we need to get some energy by energy drinks. That's what we need to do, huh?
Well, I'm glad you raised that question, because not too long back in the Union Bulletin there was In fact, there were 2 weeks in a row in which it mentioned that the LDS Church was advising young people not to use caffeinated beverages. That's part of their belief
Their
system.
traditions, huh?
Their tradition.
They've had some counsel there.
That's right, and it came to in 1 week. I mean, 1 week, and then the next week it was mentioned again. And there's some very interesting studies out about coffee and caffeine, and this is something that is a real concern to me. Now, at one time, I was living in Farmington, New Mexico, and working on the Navajo Indian Reservation, but I also got involved in some community efforts, and we were trying to get a ban on smoking in the workplace. And I learned that during the course of doing that the tobacco industry had put out 40 million secret documents.
Secret documents?
Yeah. The public
emails and various things?
Yeah, in the newspapers and wherever. They were published documents.
Oh.
But they were wanting people to think that secondhand smoke was not dangerous.
Oh,
okay.
They were trying to put a smoke screen out there.
Yeah, they were trying to put a smoke screen out there. Well, and then after that, I was aware of some problems as far as the caffeine. We've talked about caffeine, and that launched me on a study that took me about 6 months. There's been some very interesting studies come out from Lowland in regards to this and other sources, and we found out that the caffeine industry has taken a lesson from the tobacco industry, and they have managed to adulterate the information so that we're not getting the correct information either about caffeine.
Oh.
So it's important that people know that, and there's kind of things coming out in the newspaper today about, you should drink your coffee and this is okay. But the majority of people don't know that the caffeine industry is, and it's very subtle. You wouldn't be able to tell just from reading the articles.
So ideas like perhaps at certain points, if you're cleared for, I believe I read something about if your eyes are able to take this, and if your heart is able to take caffeine, that it may sustain your memory.
Yeah.
That caffeine possibly would give you an edge in sustaining your memory if you're concerned about those areas, which of course a lot of people are.
Right.
So possibly, is caffeine ever, well, talk to us about, as a doctor, why caffeine is a positive in the medical field. Is there a positive factor? Can you use caffeine in emergencies or to help?
There may be very rare times that when caffeine can be, but in general, it should not be used. And there's a number of good studies. And like I said, I want to emphasize again, the caffeine industry has managed to get this out. And
like the tobacco people,
yeah,
like they wanted to
really
disguise the.
If you read an article, then you need to say, who paid for that article? That's one of the big questions.
Okay.
And that's very difficult to find out. They have gotten very skilled about hiding this. Now, I happen to have in my files clear evidence that this is true. I'm not just making up this story. I know that, and I have the evidence.
Well, I like to underscore that.
Yes.
Since I've last seen you,
yes.
We haven't done this for quite a few months,
right.
actually.
Right.
And I was introduced to this rather recent video that is online,
yeah.
and its title is in a way catchy, perhaps in the negative sense, but it's called "What the Health."
Oh, yes.
What the Health?
Yes, yes.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Well, I have a copy for you after our program.
Okay. Okay.
And it highlights what you've just said about the mixing of sponsorships and studies. So your point is highly supported by this movie
Yes.
as to who is paying for these studies is a big factor.
Oh, it's very important.
Yeah.
And the the animal industry and those get things in the paper and make you think that you can eat red meat now, and and all that sort of
Yes,
thing.
ever since the World Health Organization came out with its warnings of red meat,
Yeah.
there's been, I've just heard even on National Public Radio within the last week or two, significant pushback
Yeah.
about that announcement.
Right. Right. So,
Well, talk to us about, do you think the Mormon Church, and I might include the Adventist Church, do you think there is good reason why there's a tradition and a significant warning against drinking energy drinks? What would happen? What happens?
well, the energy drinks actually can induce people. This is one of the big issues, especially for young people. It leads to other addictions.
Oh.
And in the course of my studies, I contacted people from Duke University, Johns Hopkins University, Wake Forest University, about 4 or 5, and one of the universities in New York, all on this issue. And it's clear that the caffeine will lead to addictions. And
One time on a previous show that you and I sat in,
yes,
you had a rather startling statistic about how energy drinks do lead to alcohol dependencies.
all right.
It was very,
Yeah.
very sobering to
Yeah.
see that statistic.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact figures, but I do remember having a high impression
Yeah.
on what you've just said
Yeah,
here to
right.
us.
Right.
So that's what you would consider for adolescents, who, of course, even the state is interested in them
Yeah.
not being introduced to alcohol
Right.
before, isn't it 21 in this state, or 22?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's anyway, I think it's 21.
Yeah.
So by possibly not hardly regulating
Yeah.
energy drinks for adolescents,
Yeah.
that's a big
Yeah.
challenge.
Yes, it
just,
is. It is a
when
big
when they're
challenge.
prepared
Yeah.
and getting prepared to
Yeah.
succumb to alcohol addictions,
Right. Right.
and others
Right.
too.
But I think one of the important things is to think about is adults don't need caffeine either, or coffee. And I'm 92 years old now, and I don't need any, and I know a lot of people of my age, especially given the Adventist Church is thinking on this, that there's no such thing as a coffee, what should I, shortage, or a need for coffee. Our body doesn't crying out for that. It
So,
doesn't need-
Don, talk to us about if you know that driving. What do you do? Of course, sleep apnea issues are
Right.
huge as far as going to sleep on the road.
Right.
And so somebody that does have this problem should be certainly checked out for their sleep issues.
Right. Yeah.
But I think a lot of caffeine and driving is
Yeah.
happening. I think
Well-
they're afraid to go to sleep that if they don't have the caffeine.
It may well be.
I mean, they're afraid that they will go to sleep.
Right, right. But there's a good answer for that. In fact, I have had problems dozing off to sleep myself when driving.
And
I
so what do you do?
I drink water. I have a bottle of water,
Oh.
and if I get a little sleepy, I just drink some water, and that is taken away. In fact, I can't remember I mentioned this. I think maybe we have at a previous time. The water works fine for me, and I just came.
So making sure you're hydrated well when you're driving, and then
Right.
certainly if you
Yeah.
need to pull over and get that
Yeah.
energy nap,
Yeah.
that power nap,
Yeah.
instead of the power drinks
Right.
or the energy drinks,
Right.
get a power nap in
Right.
there.
Yeah, you can do that. I've never had to do that. In fact, I have said I've probably fallen asleep so many times you can't count it. And when I changed some of my practices, in fact, I used to nod off on driving home from work.
Well, we have to leave it there. That sounds quite dangerous to me, Don.
Right.
But you are here and at 92, and God has preserved you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don, for joining us today on
My
these
pleasure.
very important reminders. And thank you for joining us on Valley Viewpoint. I'm Roger Johnson.